This is problem 3 of the final exam review worksheet. And in this problem, we'll see how multiplexers work and also shift registers. So we've got these multiplexers set up, and we are told that they start with Q4, Q3, Q2, Q1, Q0 as 0, 1, 1, 0, 0. And then for the next 3 clock cycles, the input into the select is this variable purple. And so the select input is going to change from 1 to 0 to 1 over 3 consecutive clock cycles. And we are supposed to show what the next 3 states are from that starting point. So let's make a little table here. And purple is our variable for the select input. And then we have Q4, Q3, Q2, Q1, and Q0. And we start in the state 0, 1, 1, 0, 0. And the first value of purple, our select variable, is 1. So we need to see what that does. So we're going to look and see when the select input is 1, then the output for each multiplexer is going to be the input, the 1 input on the multiplexer. So the select is 1, and so the output will be the input into it will be the 1 input. So here for Q4, the 1 input, we follow that, is the output from Q0. So Q4 will become what Q0 was before. And Q0 before was 0. And so Q4 will become 0. Now Q3, the select input is 1. So the output of Q, or the output of the multiplexer, which becomes D, and because it's a D flip-flop, Q follows D, so Q will be whatever D is. So we look to see what the 1 input is, and the 1 input is the output from Q4. So the multiplexer will have the output from the 1 input, and the 1 input is the Q4 output. So the Q4 output from the time before was 0, so Q3 will now become 0. Now Q2 has 1 for the select input, so we'll look at what is the 1 input, and it's the value from Q3. Q3 was 1, so we get 1. Q1, select is 1, so we look at the 1 input. The 1 input was Q2, and so that will be the output for the multiplexer. It will be the value of Q2, which is the value of D, which is the value of the output for Q1. So let's see, the value for Q2 was 1, so Q1 now becomes 1. Q0, its input will be the 1 input is the Q1 output. The Q1 output was 0, so Q0 will be 0. So if you looked, this has the effect of shifting everything right, and the Q0 wrapped around and became Q4. Okay, so our next value for our select input is 0. So that means the multiplexer will have as output whatever the input is to the 0. So let's look at Q4. the input, the 0 input, is the output from Q1. The output from Q1 was 1, so this becomes 1. The for Q3, sorry, that's in the wrong place. Let's separate this out. Okay, so the value for Q3, our select input is 0. So let's see what the 0 input is. The 0 input is the output from Q0. Q0 was 0, so we'll have 0 here. Q2, the 0 input is Q4. Q4 was 0, so this becomes 0. Q1, the 0 input was Q3. Q3 was 0, so this becomes 0. Q0, the 0 input is Q2. Q2 was 1, so this becomes 1. And so we can see that this has the effect of shifting everything left by, see, this 1 ends up all the way here, so 1, 2, 3, so we're shifting everything 3. Okay, so our next value for the select input is 1. So our output for the multiplexer will be the 1 input. And for Q4, the 1 input is the output for Q0, so that becomes 1. For Q3, the 1 input is the output from Q4, so that becomes 1. For Q2, the 1 input is Q3. Q3 was 0, so this becomes 0. Q1, our 1 input was Q2. Q2 was 0, so this becomes 0. And Q0, our 1 input was Q1. Q1 was 0, so this becomes 0. So just like we saw before, this has the effect of shifting right with Q0 coming around and becoming Q4.